Hey there, it's Chris from Good Roads. In the last video, I showed off this set of 3D printed mold designs that I had made to help me cast my own wheels, and in the video before that, we had designed some 3D printable cores. So we have cores, we have a mold, now we gotta cast some wheels. Also in the last video, I left off with a bunch of tests in the pressure pot, testing all the different post-processing treatments that I did on the mold to make sure that none of the treatments or chemicals that I used, the paste wax or the mold release, which is I'm just using petroleum jelly, to make sure that none of that fouled up my urethane and made sure that everything cured properly. Well, I'm happy to report back that every single test was a success. The urethane rubber had no problems with the paste wax or petroleum jelly, and it even played nice with the cups that I printed on a resin printer. And that opens up all kinds of cool possibilities for the future. Resin printing gives you a much higher degree of accuracy, so the fact that it plays nice with urethane is pretty exciting. But for the present, we have all the information we need. I have the answers that I was looking for. We're ready to cast some wheels. Let's do it. So I'm starting off with my sanded, waxed, and buffed mold set, and the test that I did showed that using a mold release helps the wax coating last longer. So I'm going to apply some petroleum jelly to the inside faces of the mold. Next up, I grabbed one of my 3D printed cores and clamped it into place between the mold base and the mold insert. Then I screw the mold wall in place to complete the set, and there we have it. My mold is complete, my core is in place, and I'm ready to cast. Time to pull the trigger and prep some urethane. For this cast, I'm using Smooth On's PMC 790. I chose this urethane because of A, its durometer. I'm hoping to make wheels for my freestyle board, and 90A seems like a good hardness. And B, because of its pot life. This resin has a 20-minute pot life, which gives me plenty of time to work as I'm mixing and pouring my resin. So I measured out my part B and mixed in some urethane pigments, also from Smooth On, until I had a color that I liked. Then I added my part A and mixed the parts thoroughly. Once the parts were integrated, I poured the urethane into the mold using the built-in funnel section. And wow, this stuff is viscous. I'm really glad I had that 20-minute work time because this urethane flowed so much more slowly than the other ones I've used. I don't know if that's because it cures to a harder durometer, or if that's part of the equation of getting that long pot life, but I'd feel a lot better about using this particular urethane if it flowed more freely. But with a little patience, I managed to fill the mold. I quickly got my mold full of raw urethane into the pressure pot and pressurized. After which I had to deal with the other downside of this particular urethane, which is that it has a 48-hour cure time. Yep, I had to wait 2 days to pull this out of the pot. So we're gonna be practicing some patience. I waited 48 hours, went back and pulled my mold out to see if the wait was worth the while. I should put ridges on this too. Got some leaking, but look at that. That looks good, guys. That looks real good. I just gotta get it open. Just amazed and excited that that seems to have worked. Yes. Yes! We gotta get this guy out of here somehow. Ah! Look at it! Holy crap! It worked! The cast came out super clean. At this point, I just had to remove any extra resin that had flowed between the parts of the mold or into the core cavity. And while it's not perfect, these are really, really good results. That surface finish that came off the 3D printed mold is flawless. The only real issues with the wheels are some bubbles, probably from how slowly the urethane flowed into the mold, and me slightly underfilling the mold. Outside of that, the mold system worked gangbusters. So how about the biggest thing I was worried about with this project? How about the core? Is it properly aligned? Is the rolling surface flat or is it all wobbly? Well, it's gotta be on an axle to figure that out, so let's mount it to a board. Looks smooth. Looks real smooth. The lips of the wheel are a little crooked, but the rolling patch itself is almost perfectly straight. Okay, so we cast something that looks an awful lot like a real wheel. It has a core, and the core is aligned. The core is 3D printed. The urethane is off-the-shelf urethane. It's not specialty skate urethane. The question still stands, did we make something that just looks a lot like a wheel, or did we make a wheel? So after some quick laps around the garage and some overly excited social media posts, I decided to really put this wheel to the test. And personally, the thing that I'm still most worried about are those 3D printed cores. Because of the nature of 3D printing, those aren't 100% solid pieces, and I really want to know whether or not they're going to hold up to the abuse that I want to put them through. So I decided to try something really high impact. Now, I'm no street skater, and my ollies are complete trash, so I thought what better way to beat up on a board part, beat up on a set of wheels, than to put in a couple hours practicing ollies. Just jump on the things. Well, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The bad news is my ollies are still trash. But they're getting better. I think I figured out some stuff with my front foot. They're junky, but they're a little bit less junky. The good news is that after hours of throwing my 150-pound self at this little wheel, it held up great. I'm telling you guys, it rolled great, it gripped great. I couldn't tell the difference between this wheel and the professionally made ones, and switching the orientation of the board or anything. And honestly, as I was riding, I was way more worried about that Baltic Birch homemade deck breaking than I was about anything going wrong with the wheel. Now, not all the news about the homemade wheel is good news. As you might have noticed, I've only got one of them, which is because I broke the mold. And this wasn't a one-time thing. This one component, the threaded section of the insert where it threads into the mold base, I had that break 3 separate times. So I've remade this part 3 times, and each time I did, it broke. It's just a weak point in the part. I tried to reinforce it, I tried to redesign it, but I think what that means ultimately is that this part, the specific aspect of the mold that forms part of the inner lip of the wheel and holds the core in place, needs to be rethought. But it's only the attachment method for that part of the mold that needs to be updated. The mold system works. Dude, this was a great success. I'm so excited about this. Yeah. I made that. This is so cool. So while we're on the topic of wheels, I want to talk urethane real quick before we wrap up. I'm hunting 2 urethanes without any success, Maybe you guys can help me out. The first is something in the 80 to 90A range on the shore hardness scale with a relatively long pot life, looking for around 10 minutes, and a relatively short cure time, looking for less than 24 hours. The longer pot life means that I could easily mix up multiple colors and do dual color and swirl type wheels, the same way that I did with the bushings. And the shorter cure time means that my pressure pot wouldn't be locked down for 2 days at a time every time I try to make something. That's just a little bit too long for the amount of patience that I have. A urethane with those qualities, especially if it mixes in an easy ratio, like a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio, would be an ideal urethane for making these kinds of parts at the hobbyist level. So, if you know where I could find one, let me know. I'll try to hunt it down. The other resin I'm looking for is something between 97 and 100, 102, whatever, A on the shore hardness scale, and I can't find anything like that anywhere. Forget about pot life or mixing ratios, at least in a quantity that's reasonable for an individual to buy that's not like multiple gallons. I can't find a urethane rubber like that anywhere. Here's the deal. Here's why I'm looking for that one. If we can find a hard urethane, we can cast wheels, skateboard wheels, that don't need cores. That means the mold system needs to be way less complex. We don't have to worry about aligning parts. We don't have to worry about the core getting misaligned from the rolling surface. And that means that making homemade skate wheels gets much, much easier. So if you can find me a resin that's somewhere between the high 90s, low 100 hardness, I will make a whole new set of molds, and it'll lower the barrier to entry and make it much easier for you guys to get out there and start making your own wheels. So for now, I'll keep working on version 2 of the 3D printable mold system, get one that doesn't break so easily. And in the meantime, I've got a lot of other cool projects that I'm working on that I'm gonna share with you guys here on the channel. So subscribe and stick around. There's more awesome DIY board sport type content coming right your way. If you've got any comments or questions, or if you know where I can find either of those two urethanes, leave a comment down below and we'll talk. If you know where those urethanes can be got, it would be a huge help, so please let me know. As always, I love having you guys along for the journey, but especially for the successes. And until next time, I'll see you soon.